When Zombieland was released in 2009, it brought together an ensemble of actors whose careers were at very different stages, yet each contributed something unique to the film's distinct tone. The movie's mixture of horror, comedy, and road trip adventure needed a group of performers who could balance absurdity with sincerity. Looking at the main cast members and their careers both before and after the movie gives us a sense of how the film both benefited from their established personas and also helped shape the directions their careers would take afterward. Jesse Eisenberg plays Columbus, the socially awkward but unexpectedly resourceful protagonist who survives the zombie apocalypse by adhering to a strict set of rules. Before Zombieland, Eisenberg had been steadily working in indie films and smaller projects. He was often cast as intelligent but anxious young men, such as in The Squid and the Whale or Adventureland. His trademark nervous energy and hesitant delivery became part of his screen persona, and Zombieland leaned into those qualities. The role of Columbus fit him perfectly, allowing him to channel insecurity into a source of comedy while also showing a surprising resilience and leadership ability. Zombieland gave Eisenberg his first mainstream recognition in a genre film with broad appeal. This performance helped solidify him as a reliable lead actor, paving the way for more ambitious roles, most notably his Oscar-nominated performance as Mark Zuckerberg in The Social Network. While Zombieland played to his strengths as a quirky everyman, it also expanded the audience's perception of him, proving he could anchor a movie that blended action, comedy, and horror. Woody Harrelson took on the role of Tallahassee, the brash, charismatic zombie killer who masks his grief with bravado and humor. By the time Zombieland was made, Harrelson was already a seasoned actor with decades of experience. He rose to fame in the 1980s through his role on the television sitcom Cheers, where he played the naive but lovable bartender Woody Boyd. Over the years, he diversified his career with acclaimed dramatic performances in films like The People vs. Larry Flynt and Natural Born Killers, while also continuing to excel in comedies. Tallahassee combined both aspects of Harrelson's range, his comedic timing and his ability to inject depth into seemingly larger-than-life characters. His love of Twinkies and flamboyant zombie-killing methods provided humor, but beneath the bravado was a man mourning the loss of his young son. Zombieland revitalized Harrelson's career as a mainstream leading man in action comedy films, and he would go on to take more roles that balanced intensity and levity, such as in the Hunger Games franchise, True Detective, and later Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. His work in Zombieland remains one of his most iconic comedic roles, and he reprised the character a decade later in Zombieland, Double Tap. Emma Stone's role as Wichita was a turning point in her career. Before Zombieland, she was best known for her comedic supporting roles in films such as Superbad and The House Bunny. She had a reputation for sharp wit, strong screen presence, and a knack for delivering sarcastic yet charming performances. Zombieland gave her the chance to play a more layered character who is both cunning and vulnerable. Wichita, along with her younger sister Little Rock, survives by conning others, showing how wit and resourcefulness can be just as valuable as brute strength in an apocalyptic setting. Emma Stone infused the role with both toughness and heart, creating a character who is more than just a love interest for Columbus. Her chemistry with Jesse Eisenberg added a romantic subplot that felt genuine without overwhelming the film's comedic and action-driven core. After Zombieland, Stone's career trajectory skyrocketed, leading to her becoming one of the most successful actresses of her generation. She went on to star in Easy A, which cemented her as a leading lady in comedies, and then broadened her range with dramatic roles in films like The Help, Birdman, and La La Land, for which she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Looking back, Zombieland was a crucial stepping stone that showcased her ability to balance humor, drama, and charisma in equal measure. Abigail Breslin, who played Little Rock, was the youngest member of the main cast but had already achieved considerable success by that point. She had been nominated for an Academy Award for her performance in Little Miss Sunshine, where she displayed remarkable talent at a very young age. Zombieland gave her the chance to expand her repertoire by entering the horror comedy genre. As Little Rock, she played a precocious teenager who, despite her age, proves capable of surviving in a dangerous, zombie-filled world. Her dynamic with Emma Stone as her protective older sister helped ground the movie's emotional stakes, while her interactions with Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg brought both humor and heart. Breslin's career after Zombieland continued to involve diverse roles, though she never quite reached the same cultural prominence she had as a child actor. Nonetheless, her participation in Zombieland showed her versatility and helped her transition into more mature roles later in her career. One of the most memorable performances in the film, though brief, was Bill Murray's cameo. Playing himself in a self-parodying role, Murray provided one of the movie's most famous and beloved scenes. His appearance came as a surprise to audiences and became an instant highlight of the film. Murray was already a comedy legend, known for classics like Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, and Caddyshack, as well as his later work with director Wes Anderson in films such as Lost in Translation and The Life Aquatic. By agreeing to appear in Zombieland as a version of himself who survived the apocalypse by disguising as a zombie, Murray added meta-humor and a sense of irreverence that elevated the movie's comedic edge. This cameo is often cited as one of the best celebrity cameos in modern film, and it reinforced Murray's reputation as a performer willing to poke fun at his own image. Zombieland was released in 2009, at a time when zombie media had already begun to dominate popular culture but had not yet reached its full saturation. The early 2000s had seen a major resurgence of interest in the zombie subgenre with films like 28 Days Later, the remake of Dawn of the Dead, and later the rise of zombie-themed video games such as Left 4 Dead and Dead Rising. By the time Zombieland arrived, audiences were familiar with zombie apocalypses, but the film's unique combination of horror, comedy, and heartfelt storytelling made it stand out from its contemporaries. Its cultural impact extended well beyond its box office success, influencing trends in entertainment, shaping the way zombie narratives were presented, and embedding itself in the language and imagery of pop culture. One of the most significant contributions Zombieland made to pop culture was the way it combined self-awareness with genre tropes. The film leaned into humor while never entirely dismissing the stakes of survival. It embraced the absurdity of a world overrun by zombies while still delivering moments of genuine emotion, particularly through the character arcs of Tallahassee and Columbus. This balance of comedy and horror became a template for later works, including television series like The Walking Dead, which, although more serious in tone, occasionally used dark humor to break tension. The idea that a zombie story could be both funny and emotionally resonant influenced a wave of zombie comedies, or zomcoms, that followed, including Warm Bodies, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, and even the return of Shaun of the Dead to renewed popularity after Zombieland's release. Zombieland's cultural footprint also expanded through its use of Columbus's rules for survival. The rules, which appeared on screen in bold, creative visual sequences, quickly became one of the movie's most iconic features. Rules like cardio, double tap, and beware of bathrooms became shorthand not only for fans of the film but also as memes and jokes across the internet. These rules were quoted, parroted, and adapted into countless contexts, often humorously applied to everyday life situations unrelated to zombies. This playful recontextualization contributed to the film's ongoing relevance in online spaces, where fans created their own survival rules or made social media posts referencing the original set. Even people who had not seen the movie often recognized references to the double tap, a phrase that became part of pop culture slang. The cameo of Bill Murray also left a lasting mark on cultural memory. Murray's willingness to play a fictionalized version of himself surviving the apocalypse was not only unexpected but also served as one of the most celebrated cameos in modern cinema. It set a precedent for future films to experiment with similar surprise appearances by celebrities, and it reinforced the idea that self-parody could be a powerful comedic tool. The scene was frequently referenced in articles, memes, and fan discussions for years afterward. Bill Murray's death scene, in particular, became a topic of endless internet debate, with fans lamenting that one of the funniest and most original moments in the movie ended in tragedy. This element of the film became so embedded in its legacy that the sequel, Zombieland, Double Tap, included further play on Murray's cameo during the credits, demonstrating how indelible the moment had become. The film's cultural resonance also extended into its timing with larger social trends. The late 2000s and early 2010s saw a growing fascination with apocalyptic narratives, reflecting societal anxieties about economic instability, climate change, and global conflict. Zombies served as a metaphor for mindless consumerism, conformity, and societal collapse, themes that had been present in earlier zombie works but were reinvigorated in the post-9/11 cultural climate. Zombieland, however, approached these heavy ideas with levity, offering audiences both escapism and catharsis. In an era marked by financial recession and uncertainty, the film's irreverent humor provided relief while still acknowledging the underlying chaos of the world. Its success suggested that audiences were not only interested in bleak depictions of apocalypse, but also wanted stories that could make them laugh in the face of disaster. Zombieland's influence also reached into the realm of video games, both directly and indirectly. The survival rule format and the emphasis on inventive zombie kills echoed the mechanics of many games popular at the time, particularly first-person shooters with zombie themes. Fans often compared the movie's tone to the cooperative chaos of playing games like Left 4 Dead, where survival required teamwork, humor, and creativity. The film structure itself, with its episodic encounters and focus on different levels of survival, almost resembled the progression of a video game. This blending of cinematic storytelling with game-like pacing resonated with younger audiences who were immersed in gaming culture, further cementing Zombieland as a film that captured the zeitgeist of its era. In terms of its historical significance within the zombie genre, Zombieland occupies a unique position. George A. Romero had established zombies as vehicles for social commentary in the late 1960s and 1970s, particularly through Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Later works like 28 Days Later modernized zombies for the 21st century, emphasizing speed and viral infection as new sources of fear. Zombieland, however, shifted focus away from the traditional horror elements and emphasized style, humor, and character-driven storytelling. By doing so, it expanded the genre's possibilities and attracted audiences who might not otherwise have been interested in a zombie movie. It proved that the zombie narrative could evolve beyond pure horror into something that could merge genres seamlessly. The making of Zombieland was as unconventional and colorful as the film itself. Behind the comedy, action, and horror on screen was a fascinating production process filled with creative decisions, logistical challenges, and improvisation that ultimately helped shape the film into the cult classic it became. From its development as a television pilot to its transformation into a feature-length film, Zombieland's journey behind the scenes reveals how persistence, experimentation, and collaboration can turn an offbeat idea into a successful cinematic event. The project began as a concept for a television series rather than a movie. Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, the screenwriters, initially envisioned Zombieland as a weekly episodic show in which survivors of the apocalypse would encounter new threats and invent new survival rules. The rules that Columbus narrates throughout the film were originally designed as recurring segments within the show, almost like lessons or survival tips for viewers. When the television pilot failed to materialize, the concept was reworked into a feature film. This history explains the movie's episodic structure, as each encounter with zombies feels like a self-contained adventure that could have easily been part of a weekly series. It also explains why the survival rules became such an integral and visually striking element of the film. They were initially intended to be a central gimmick for an ongoing show. Director Ruben Fleischer, making his feature debut, was brought on to helm the project. Fleischer was relatively unknown at the time, but his background in directing music videos and commercials gave him a strong visual style and an ability to deliver fast-paced, visually dynamic content. His approach to Zombieland leaned heavily on stylistic flourishes, particularly in how the rules appeared on screen as bold text integrated into the environment. These sequences, where rules like cardio or double tap would appear floating next to characters during action scenes, required careful planning and post-production work. They became one of the film's most distinctive stylistic signatures, helping it stand apart from other zombie movies. Filming took place primarily in Georgia, which at the time was becoming a popular location for productions due to tax incentives and diverse landscapes. The city of Atlanta and surrounding areas provided the backdrop for much of the movie, doubling as an abandoned, zombie-ridden version of America. Locations included amusement parks, grocery stores, suburban streets, and highways, all chosen for their ability to reflect the emptiness of a post-apocalyptic world. Shooting in real-world abandoned spaces helped the film achieve authenticity while also keeping costs down. One of the most memorable locations was Wild Adventures theme park in Valdosta, Georgia, which served as the setting for the climactic final showdown. The use of a real amusement park, with its rides, flashing lights, and eerie emptiness, contributed to the film's surreal but exciting climax. The production faced numerous challenges typical of a zombie film, particularly when it came to makeup, special effects, and stunts. The makeup team, led by effects artist Tony Gardner, worked tirelessly to create zombies that struck the right balance between grotesque and comedic. The filmmakers wanted the zombies to be scary enough to create tension but not so horrific that they undercut the film's comedic tone. Practical makeup was combined with digital effects in key sequences, such as when zombies were dispatched in creative, over-the-top ways. The infamous Zombie Kill of the Week gag required special coordination, as each kill had to be both visually inventive and technically feasible. The actors themselves contributed significantly to the film's improvisational energy. Woody Harrelson, in particular, brought his trademark spontaneity to the set, often adding small touches to his character that were not in the script. His decision to carry a banjo and other quirky weapons for zombie kills, for example, was partly born from improvisation and collaboration with the props department. Jesse Eisenberg's delivery of Columbus's narration was another area that required careful attention. The voiceover, recorded separately from most of the filming, had to match the pacing and rhythm of the edited sequences. Eisenberg's dry, awkward tone became one of the film's defining features, and achieving that effect involved recording multiple variations of the narration in post-production. One of the most interesting behind-the-scenes stories involves the film's now-famous Bill Murray cameo. Originally, the filmmakers had considered other celebrities for the role, including Patrick Swayze, who sadly became unavailable due to his illness at the time. Other names tossed around included Sylvester Stallone, Matthew McConaughey, and even Mark Hamill. Eventually, Bill Murray was approached, and to the delight of everyone involved, he agreed to appear. The cameo was filmed at a mansion in Atlanta, which stood in for Murray's Beverly Hills home. The sequence required Murray to improvise much of his dialogue, including the moment when he jokingly reenacts his Ghostbusters performance by pretending to blast zombies with a vacuum cleaner. The cast and crew recalled that Murray's presence on set completely transformed the energy of the production, and the scene quickly became the highlight of the movie. Harrelson also provided one of the production's more unusual behind-the-scenes anecdotes. Known for his commitment to environmental causes and vegan lifestyle, Harrelson insisted that the Twinkies Tallahassee obsesses over throughout the film be replaced with a vegan alternative. This led the props department to create special Twinkie substitutes that looked identical to the famous snack but were made with non-animal ingredients. Despite this adjustment, the running joke about Tallahassee's quest for Twinkies remained intact and became one of the film's most memorable gags. Cinematographer Michael Bonvillain helped bring the film's unique visual style to life. He used a mixture of handheld camera work and slick, carefully composed shots to capture both the chaotic zombie attacks and the quieter character-driven moments. One of the challenges was balancing the tone visually, ensuring that the movie looked polished enough to function as an action film but also retained a playful energy appropriate for a comedy. The use of slow motion, particularly in the opening credits sequence showing zombies attacking people in stylized, exaggerated ways, required intricate planning. That opening montage, set to Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls, established the irreverent tone immediately and is still remembered as one of the most iconic opening sequences in zombie cinema. Post-production was another area where the film took shape. Editing played a crucial role in maintaining the balance between comedy, horror, and action. The pacing of the film relied heavily on timing. Too much focus on the horror elements risked making the film too grim, while leaning too much into the comedy could have reduced the stakes. The editors worked closely with Fleischer to ensure that each sequence felt cohesive, with transitions between action, humor, and emotional beats flowing smoothly. Visual effects teams also worked on integrating the survival rules into the environment, which was a groundbreaking stylistic choice at the time. At its core, Zombieland is a story of survival and connection set against the backdrop of a world overrun by zombies. What makes the film particularly compelling is not only its unique blending of genres, horror, comedy, road trip adventure, and even romance, but also the way its narrative is structured. Instead of relying solely on traditional horror pacing, the film takes an episodic, character-driven approach that mirrors its origins as a television series concept. This episodic feel gives the movie a rhythm that alternates between bursts of chaotic action and quieter moments of introspection or comedy. When examined closely, the film's narrative structure reveals a story about individuals learning to form a family in a world where trust has become a rare commodity. The movie begins with a strong opening sequence that immediately establishes tone, pace, and perspective. Through Columbus's narration, we are introduced to the concept of survival rules, a motif that runs throughout the film. The use of narration provides exposition in a way that feels organic and humorous rather than forced. Instead of lengthy dialogue scenes explaining how the world fell apart, Columbus walks the audience through survival strategies like cardio and the double tap, which are both practical and comedic. These rules double as a framing device for the narrative, breaking the story into segments that highlight different lessons or themes. The opening montage of chaotic slow-motion zombie attacks, set to Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls, serves as both spectacle and satire, letting the audience know immediately that this will not be a conventional horror film. After the rules are introduced, the film transitions into Columbus's story. His role as the narrator allows the audience to see the apocalypse through the eyes of an introverted and cautious survivor, a character type rarely depicted as the hero in zombie media. Structurally, the film begins with his isolation. He is literally walking alone through a ravaged world, before gradually expanding to include other characters. This growth mirrors the central arc of the film, moving from solitude to community. The first act establishes Columbus's worldview and loneliness, which are then challenged once he meets Tallahassee. The meeting of Columbus and Tallahassee marks the beginning of the second narrative thread, the buddy comedy dynamic. Their partnership provides both tension and humor, as the neurotic and rule-following Columbus contrasts sharply with the reckless, fearless, and emotionally wounded Tallahassee. Structurally, the film uses this odd couple pairing to generate humor while also laying the foundation for emotional growth. Tallahassee's obsession with finding Twinkies may seem like a running gag, but it also symbolizes his struggle to hold onto something small and comforting in a chaotic world. As their journey continues, the audience sees cracks in Tallahassee's tough exterior, especially when his backstory of losing his son is revealed. This layered character development helps ground the otherwise absurd events of the film. The narrative takes another turn with the introduction of Wichita and Little Rock, two sisters who con the men and repeatedly leave them stranded. This marks the shift into the second act, which revolves around trust and companionship. The episodic nature of the film is most apparent here, as the plot unfolds in a series of encounters, tricks, and reconciliations between the group. Each segment, whether it is a road sequence, a grocery store raid, or a pit stop at Bill Murray's mansion, feels like its own contained adventure. Yet, these adventures all serve the overarching structure of building a surrogate family unit. One of the film's most notable narrative beats occurs at Bill Murray's mansion. This sequence functions as both a comedic interlude and a narrative midpoint. The absurdity of encountering Murray, alive and disguised as a zombie to blend in, provides one of the film's most memorable scenes. It also allows for moments of bonding among the characters as they relax, play games, and temporarily escape the horrors outside. However, the sequence also delivers a sudden tonal shift when Murray is accidentally killed by Columbus. This moment serves as a reminder that in Zombieland, comedy and tragedy are intertwined. Even a cameo filled with humor can end in death, reinforcing the unpredictability of the world. Structurally, this midpoint injects both levity and poignancy, propelling the characters toward deeper connection. The third act begins as the group heads toward the amusement park, Pacific Playland, which the sisters hope will provide a sense of normalcy and joy. This decision reflects their yearning for lost childhood innocence and safety, a theme carried especially by Little Rock. However, the narrative introduces conflict as this choice leads them into danger, with the noise and lights of the amusement park attracting hordes of zombies. This climax fulfills the film's promise of over-the-top action, with Columbus and Tallahassee staging a daring rescue amid roller coasters, carnival rides, and flashing neon. The amusement park setting is more than just spectacle. It symbolizes escapism and the search for joy in a devastated world, while also serving as the crucible where the group's bond is tested and solidified. The climax is structured around two parallel arcs. Tallahassee has his moment of catharsis as he unleashes his grief and rage through an epic series of zombie kills, culminating in him trapping himself in a game booth while mowing down countless undead. This sequence embodies both his destructive energy and his redemptive role as protector. Meanwhile, Columbus completes his transformation from cowardly rule follower to brave leader. When he overcomes his fear of clowns in order to save Wichita and Little Rock, the film provides a symbolic moment of growth. The clown zombie, introduced earlier as part of Columbus's personal phobia, becomes a narrative payoff, representing his final step toward overcoming fear and embracing life. The resolution of the film brings the group together in a way that completes the central arc of moving from isolation to family. Wichita and Columbus acknowledge their romantic connection, while Tallahassee and Little Rock bond as a father figure and surrogate daughter. The film ends with Columbus reflecting in voiceover that although he started as a loner with a list of rules, he has found something more important than survival strategies: companionship. This closing reflection ties back to the rules motif, but subverts it by suggesting that rules alone are not enough. Human connection is what truly matters. Structurally, Zombieland succeeds because it balances episodic encounters with an overarching emotional journey. Each sequence, the rules, the con games, the mansion interlude, the amusement park finale, serves a purpose in either developing character relationships or reinforcing themes. The pacing alternates between moments of frenetic action and quieter, character-driven scenes, preventing the film from becoming monotonous. Unlike many zombie films that rely on a singular escalating threat, Zombieland thrives on variety, with each new location and challenge adding freshness to the narrative. Zombieland, while on the surface a fast-paced horror comedy about survivors navigating a zombie apocalypse, contains a number of deeper themes and symbolic layers that give it surprising resonance. It is not merely a sequence of gory set pieces and jokes, but rather a story that reflects on loneliness, human connection, grief, fear, consumer culture, and the search for meaning in a chaotic world. The film's humor often masks heavier undertones, and its use of recurring motifs and visual symbolism enriches what could have otherwise been a straightforward genre exercise. By analyzing the themes and symbolism of Zombieland, we can see how the film manages to be both entertaining and emotionally relevant. One of the central themes of the film is loneliness and the search for companionship. From the opening scenes, we see Columbus as a loner who has survived by avoiding contact and trusting only his rules. His survival strategies are effective, but they come at the cost of isolation. The apocalypse has not only stripped away the comforts of society, but also the connections that make life meaningful. Each of the main characters reflects a different version of this theme. Tallahassee hides his loneliness and grief behind bravado. Wichita guards herself with cynicism and scams to protect her younger sister, and Little Rock relies on her sibling for guidance, but is also deprived of a normal childhood. Throughout the film, these individuals, each broken in some way, slowly form a surrogate family. The symbolism here is clear. In a world where everything familiar has been destroyed, the most valuable survival tool is human connection. The survival rules themselves carry symbolic weight. At first glance, they are practical tips for staying alive, like cardio or check the back seat. But they also represent Columbus's worldview, his attempt to impose order on a world of chaos. Each rule is symbolic of his anxieties: the fear of being caught unprepared, the fear of vulnerability, the need for constant vigilance. By the end of the film, Columbus's adherence to these rules begins to soften as he realizes that survival alone is not enough. His final reflection, that the true rule of Zombieland is finding people to care about, symbolically subverts his earlier reliance on rigid guidelines. The rules become a metaphor for control and safety, but the film suggests that true fulfillment comes from breaking free of those boundaries and embracing risk for the sake of love and companionship. Another theme woven throughout the movie is grief and coping with loss. Tallahassee's character is the most overt exploration of this idea. At first, his obsession with Twinkies seems like a purely comedic quirk. However, as the film progresses, we learn that his swagger and violence mask the pain of losing his son. His constant need to kill zombies in exaggerated, flamboyant ways can be read as symbolic of his attempt to channel grief into action. The Twinkie itself becomes a symbol of innocence, comfort, and the small joys of life that he clings to in the face of despair. Tallahassee's arc is about confronting that grief, while also finding a new sense of purpose through his bond with Little Rock and the group. The idea that laughter and absurdity can coexist with pain becomes a recurring motif, showing how people cope with trauma in different ways. Fear is another underlying theme, explored most explicitly through Columbus's phobia of clowns. Fear defines Columbus's life. He has survived not because of strength but because of his hyper-awareness and his tendency to avoid risk. His fear of clowns, while played for laughs, is also symbolic of irrational fears that hold people back. By facing a clown zombie in the climactic amusement park sequence, Columbus symbolically conquers his deepest fear, demonstrating that growth comes from facing what terrifies us. The clown also serves as a broader symbol of how absurdity and horror are often intertwined in life. Something meant to bring joy, a clown, becomes twisted into a grotesque threat, mirroring how the film itself blends comedy and horror. Consumer culture is another theme embedded in the film, particularly in its choice of settings. Much of the story unfolds in spaces of consumption: grocery stores, convenience stores, and amusement parks. These locations, now abandoned and overrun by zombies, symbolize the collapse of consumer-driven society. The zombies themselves are often depicted in everyday clothing, suggesting that in life they were ordinary consumers, now transformed into literal mindless eaters. This ties back to the zombies' long-standing role as a metaphor for consumption and conformity, dating back to George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. In Zombieland, however, the theme is approached with irony and humor. The survivors loot stores not only for necessities but also for fun, smashing things simply because they can. The destruction of a Native American souvenir store by Tallahassee and Little Rock is a particularly pointed moment, blending humor with commentary on the emptiness of consumer goods. By mocking the ruins of consumer culture, the film suggests that in the absence of society, material possessions lose meaning, and what remains important are experiences, relationships, and survival. Family and surrogate bonds form another central thematic thread. Wichita and Little Rock's relationship as sisters is about loyalty and protection in a dangerous world. Their tendency to con strangers stems from a distrust of others, a lesson learned from a society where trust can be fatal. Yet as the film progresses, they begin to lower their guard and accept Columbus and Tallahassee as family. This theme of building a found family is common in road trip narratives, but it carries extra weight in a zombie apocalypse setting where biological families are often lost. By the end of the film, the four main characters have become a family unit, not by blood, but by choice. This symbolic creation of family in a broken world suggests resilience and hope. The amusement park at the climax is itself symbolic. It represents nostalgia, innocence, and the desire to reclaim joy in a world that has lost it. For Wichita and Little Rock, heading to Pacific Playland is about chasing a fantasy of normalcy, a return to childhood happiness. Yet the park also becomes a deadly trap, as the noise and lights attract hordes of zombies. This duality, the park as both joy and danger, symbolizes the tension between escapism and reality. Ultimately, however, the amusement park becomes the stage where the group solidifies as a family. It is where Columbus overcomes his fears, Tallahassee unleashes his grief-driven rage, and the sisters learn to trust. In this way, The park is not only a setting but a symbol of transition, from loneliness and fear toward unity and resilience. Symbolism is also present in smaller visual motifs. Mirrors and reflections, for instance, appear throughout the film, often emphasizing characters' identities and vulnerabilities. Columbus's narration often frames him as someone looking at himself critically, questioning his choices and personality. Weapons also carry symbolic weight. Tallahassee's unconventional choices, banjos, baseball bats, garden tools, reflect his flair for the dramatic and his refusal to let go of individuality even in survival. The way zombies are killed, often in creative and absurd ways, can be read as symbolic of humanity's persistence in asserting creativity and humor even when faced with annihilation. Zombieland is a film that thrives not only on its humor and character dynamics, but also on its distinctive visual style. From the moment the opening credits roll, the movie establishes itself as something more than a conventional horror comedy. The way it is shot, lit, and edited reflects a deliberate effort to balance the grotesque with the playful, creating a film that is as visually engaging as it is narratively entertaining. The cinematography and visual design play a crucial role in defining Zombieland's identity, ensuring that it feels fresh in a genre that could easily slip into monotony. By breaking down the lighting choices, framing, color palette, camera techniques, and special effects, we can see how the filmmakers crafted a unique cinematic experience that has become iconic within zombie cinema. One of the most striking elements of Zombieland's visual identity is its use of slow motion. The opening credit sequence exemplifies this perfectly. Accompanied by Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls, the sequence presents a series of chaotic zombie attacks rendered in hyper-stylized slow motion. This not only provides spectacle but also sets the comedic tone, exaggerating the violence in a way that becomes absurd rather than horrifying. The use of slow motion throughout the film emphasizes the creative kills and highlights the rules of survival as they appear on screen. These sequences function almost like visual punctuation marks, drawing attention to key comedic or thematic beats. The rules themselves are perhaps the most recognizable visual motif of the film. Words like cardio or beware of bathrooms appear in three-dimensional text, seamlessly integrated into the environment. The text is not just overlaid but interacts with the world, splintering when hit by a zombie, floating alongside characters as if part of their reality. This stylistic decision reinforces Columbus's narration and helps immerse the audience in his perspective. It is also a prime example of how the film uses visual language to enhance storytelling, blending voiceover, text, and imagery in a way that feels innovative and playful. Cinematographer Michael Bonvillain's work is central to the film's look. Known for his television work before Zombieland, Bonvillain brought a polished yet flexible style that fit the movie's hybrid tone. The film alternates between gritty realism and exaggerated spectacle. For instance, many of the road trip sequences and abandoned suburban streets are shot with muted, naturalistic lighting that conveys the emptiness of a world without human activity. In contrast, action scenes often use heightened lighting and bold framing to emphasize the over-the-top nature of the zombie kills. This contrast keeps the film visually dynamic, preventing it from settling into a single mood. Lighting plays a symbolic role as well. Daytime scenes often feel empty and sterile, with flat lighting that underscores the barrenness of the world. Nighttime sequences, on the other hand, are filled with heightened contrast, neon glow, and dramatic shadows. The climactic amusement park sequence is perhaps the best example of this. The bright carnival lights, flashing rides, and glowing neon provide a surreal backdrop for the violence, creating an almost dreamlike environment where horror and comedy coexist. The park's lighting conveys both childlike wonder and looming danger, reflecting the duality of seeking joy in a world of death. Color palette also contributes to the film's identity. Zombieland uses a mixture of earthy, desaturated tones for much of its world. Dusty browns, grays, and muted greens dominate the abandoned landscapes. These colors reflect the decay of civilization, a world where nature and ruin have taken over. In contrast, moments of levity or emotional connection often feature warmer tones. For example, scenes inside Murray's mansion have a warmer, more golden hue that conveys comfort and luxury, even in the middle of apocalypse. The amusement park, with its saturated reds, blues, and yellows, provides another contrast, visually representing the characters longing for joy and normalcy. The interplay of muted realism and bursts of vibrant color mirrors the film's tonal balance between bleakness and humor. Camera techniques are used strategically to heighten both comedy and horror. Handheld shots create immediacy during zombie chases, pulling the audience into the chaos. In contrast, static or carefully composed frames are often used during comedic or dialogue-heavy scenes, allowing the humor to play out naturally without distraction. The movie frequently employs tracking shots to follow characters during action sequences, particularly when Columbus or Tallahassee charge into combat. These shots lend fluidity to the chaos, ensuring that the action is legible while still maintaining energy. The use of perspective is another notable feature. Much of the film is framed through Columbus's eyes, reflecting his cautious, observant nature. His narration often guides the camera, with visual sequences designed to illustrate his rules. This creates a sense of intimacy between the audience and Columbus, immersing viewers in his mindset. For example, when he explains the importance of cardio, the camera lingers on an overweight man struggling to outrun zombies, exaggerated to both humorous and cautionary effect. The film uses such visual storytelling to reinforce Columbus's worldview, while also generating comedy. Special effects are crucial to Zombieland's style, particularly in how zombies are depicted. The film combines practical makeup with digital enhancements to achieve a balance between grotesque and cartoonish. Tony Gardner's practical effects team created zombies that were decayed, bloodied, and horrifying enough to pose a threat, yet not so realistic as to derail the comedic tone. Digital effects were often used to exaggerate kills, such as splattering blood in slow motion or enhancing the destruction of bodies. The result is a style that feels visceral but not disturbing, violence that is more slapstick than horrifying. The zombie kill of the week gag exemplifies the film's creative use of visual effects and cinematography. Each kill is framed like a vignette, with exaggerated staging and often absurd scenarios, such as a piano being dropped on a zombie or a woman using a grand scheme of traps. These sequences break from the main narrative, but add to the episodic energy of the film. They also highlight the inventiveness of the survivors, emphasizing that in Zombieland, survival is as much about creativity as it is about brute strength. Symbolic visual choices also reinforce themes. Tallahassee's destruction of the Native American souvenir store, for example, is filmed with gleeful slow motion and dramatic angles, turning a moment of personal catharsis into a visual spectacle. This scene symbolizes his need to vent grief and rage, but the exaggerated cinematography also invites the audience to laugh at the absurdity of such destruction. Similarly, Columbus's confrontation with the clown zombie at the amusement park is filmed with heightened intensity, using close-ups and dramatic framing to turn a personal phobia into a climactic showdown. The visual style ensures that the audience feels the weight of Columbus overcoming fear, while also acknowledging the comedic absurdity of fighting a clown in the apocalypse. Sound is one of the most essential, yet often overlooked elements in filmmaking, and in a movie like Zombieland it plays a particularly crucial role. The film is a hybrid of genres, part horror, part comedy, part road movie, and part action spectacle. Each of these requires a different tonal balance, and the soundtrack and sound design are instrumental in keeping the audience engaged while guiding their emotional responses. Without its carefully chosen music, sound effects, and auditory rhythm, Zombieland would not be nearly as effective in blending humor with horror. The first and perhaps most memorable musical choice is the use of Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls during the opening credits sequence. The pounding guitars, ominous lyrics, and iconic riffs set the perfect mood for chaos while also carrying a sense of humor through exaggeration. The sequence is presented in slow motion, showing zombies wreaking havoc across a variety of scenarios, and the heavy metal backdrop amplifies the absurdity of the violence. Instead of being frightening, the scene becomes a celebration of carnage, establishing early on that this movie is not going to treat the apocalypse with grim seriousness. Metallica's presence in the soundtrack also gave the film a certain cultural weight, connecting it to a genre of music that has long been associated with rebellion and chaos, both of which resonate with the anarchic energy of Zombieland. Beyond the opening, The film makes smart use of licensed music to set tone and inject humor. One of the standout examples is the use of Van Halen's "Everybody Wants Some" during Tallahassee's spree of destruction at the Native American souvenir store. The loud, celebratory energy of the song fits perfectly with Tallahassee's cathartic release of pent-up rage and grief. Rather than showing him as simply destructive, the music turns the sequence into an almost joyous act, inviting the audience to laugh along with his chaos. Music, in this way, transforms what could have been a dark moment into one of the film's most comedic and memorable scenes. Another notable example is the ironic use of Dolly Parton's Jolene. The song plays on a car radio during one of the road trip sequences, providing a humorous contrast to the grimness of the apocalyptic landscape. This juxtaposition, cheerful country music against the backdrop of societal collapse, highlights the absurdity that permeates the movie. Similarly, Van Morrison's Brown-Eyed Girl is used during lighter moments, offering warmth and nostalgia that contrasts with the violence and chaos elsewhere. These moments of levity, supported by music, prevent the film from becoming monotonous or too dark. The choice of Bill Murray's own theme music during his cameo is another example of clever sound design. As the characters wander through his lavish mansion, Ghostbusters music plays, reminding audiences of Murray's cultural legacy. This is both a meta-joke and a moment of affectionate nostalgia, connecting the audience's memory of Murray's comedic history to his role in the film. By including music tied to Murray's iconic past, the film creates a layered joke that works on multiple levels, both within the story world and as a reference for viewers. While licensed songs provide the film with cultural reference points and comedic juxtapositions, David Sardi's original score ensures cohesion. Sardi, a composer with a background in rock and electronic music, brings an energetic and eclectic soundscape to Zombieland. His score mixes suspenseful tones, comedic stings, and driving rhythms that keep the pace lively. Importantly, the score does not attempt to overshadow the licensed tracks, but instead fills in the narrative gaps between them, ensuring that the movie maintains an auditory balance. His use of electric guitars and percussion reflects the film's irreverent, rock and roll attitude, while more subdued tracks underscore moments of vulnerability and character bonding. Sound design extends beyond music to the world-building elements of Zombieland. The sounds of zombies are carefully crafted to be grotesque, but also slightly exaggerated. Growls, snarls, and guttural moans are layered with animalistic textures to make them more disturbing, yet they are often so over the top that they verge on comedic. For example, the clown zombie in the amusement park is given an especially exaggerated laugh snarl, turning Columbus's nightmare figure into both a threat and a punchline. The violence in Zombieland is also supported by distinctive sound effects. Each gunshot, bat swing, and splatter is heightened for comedic impact. When Tallahassee dispatches zombies with his signature flair, the sound effects emphasize the absurdity of the kills. A shotgun blast is not just loud, but has an almost cartoonishly weighty boom. Blood splatters are exaggerated with squelching sounds, making the violence less realistic and more slapstick. These auditory embellishments ensure that the gore remains humorous rather than disturbing, reinforcing the film's tone. Silence is another tool the film uses effectively. In several scenes, moments of quiet tension precede sudden bursts of chaos. For instance, when characters enter new spaces, abandoned grocery stores, empty houses, or the dark corners of the amusement park, the absence of sound creates suspense. The audience leans in, waiting for the inevitable scare, only for the silence to be broken by sudden zombie growls or comedic mishaps. This use of silence followed by exaggerated sound effects mirrors the rhythm of a punchline in comedy, where the pause builds anticipation and the noise delivers the laugh or shock. The amusement park finale is where sound design truly shines. The carnival rides and games create a cacophony of mechanical clanks, cheerful music, and flashing alarms. The juxtaposition of carnival sounds with the chaos of zombie attacks heightens the absurdity of the scene. For example, the sounds of a ride spinning, mixed with screams from both zombies and survivors, blend into a surreal symphony of chaos. The soundtrack and sound design work together to make the sequence feel both thrilling and hilarious, turning a life-or-death struggle into a bizarrely festive climax. One of the most subtle yet effective aspects of the film's sound design is the way it supports character identity. Tallahassee's scenes often have a rock-driven backdrop, underlining his rebellious, larger-than-life persona. Columbus's sequences are often quieter or accompanied by more subdued music, reflecting his cautious and neurotic personality. Wichita and Little Rock, when introduced, are given music that underscores their sly, cunning nature, blending mystery with humor. By tailoring soundscapes to each character, the film deepens audience connection and reinforces personality traits without needing overt exposition. The integration of Columbus's rules into the sound design is another innovative feature. Whenever a rule appears visually on screen, it is often accompanied by a distinct sound effect, such as a sharp whoosh or a metallic clink, to draw the viewer's attention. These sound cues reinforce the rules as central elements of the narrative and ensure they leave a lasting impression on the audience. The auditory design of the rules makes them feel almost like commandments etched into the reality of Zombieland, further blending Columbus's narration with the film's visual and auditory world. When Zombieland was released in October 2009, it arrived during a period when zombie media had already begun saturating the cultural landscape. Films like 28 Days Later, Shaun of the Dead, and the Resident Evil series had built the undead into a profitable cinematic niche, and television was only a year away from the premiere of The Walking Dead. Given this crowded field, Zombieland could easily have been dismissed as just another entry in a long line of zombie comedies or action horrors. Instead, its clever blending of comedy, gore, and character-driven storytelling made it a critical and commercial success. The reception of Zombieland was overwhelmingly positive from both critics and audiences, although some detractors found its structure uneven or overly reliant on gimmicks. On a critical level, reviewers praised Zombieland for its ability to combine familiar zombie tropes with fresh comedic elements. Many noted that the film struck a difficult balance between gruesome violence and lighthearted humor, a balance that had eluded other films in the subgenre. Unlike Shaun of the Dead, which leaned heavily into parody and British wit, Zombieland was distinctly American in its tone, irreverent, brash, and laced with pop culture references. Critics appreciated how the film used comedy not just as a layer over the horror, but as a driving force that redefined the zombie genre for U.S. audiences. The performances of the cast were a central point of acclaim. Woody Harrelson's portrayal of Tallahassee was often singled out as a highlight. His over-the-top bravado and dark humor, mixed with underlying grief for his lost son, gave the film both comedic and emotional depth. Jesse Eisenberg's neurotic and awkward Columbus earned comparisons to his earlier indie roles, but critics appreciated how he brought heart and relatability to a genre typically focused on survival instincts rather than human vulnerability. Emma Stone, though not yet the household name she would soon become, received strong praise for her sharp wit and balance of toughness, with emotional complexity as Wichita. Abigail Breslin also drew attention for her ability to hold her own against more seasoned co-stars, with reviewers often highlighting her comedic timing. The Bill Murray cameo became one of the most talked-about moments in the film's reception. Audiences loved the self-referential humor, and critics praised it as one of the best comedic cameos in recent film history. For many viewers, Murray's appearance elevated the movie into a cultural touchstone, cementing Zombieland's reputation as a film willing to poke fun at Hollywood while still delivering entertainment. However, some critics argued that the cameo, while hilarious, distracted from the narrative flow and felt more like a sketch than a plot-driven sequence. Box office numbers reflected the film's positive reception. With a relatively modest production budget estimated around $23 million, Zombieland grossed over $100 million worldwide, making it one of the most successful zombie comedies ever released. Its strong performance was seen as proof that audiences were hungry for unconventional takes on the zombie genre. The financial success also gave Sony Pictures confidence in greenlighting a sequel, although it would take a decade before Zombieland. Double Tap was finally released. Audience reactions mirrored critical acclaim, particularly among younger viewers. Many fans embraced the film's irreverent humor, the creative use of Columbus's survival rules, and the mix of slapstick violence with witty banter. The rule system itself became one of the film's most memorable features, with audiences quoting lines like "double tap" or "cardio" as catchphrases. These simple but effective comedic devices made the film stand out and left a lasting impression on pop culture. Viewers also appreciated that the movie didn't overstay its welcome, clocking in at a brisk 88 minutes, which kept the pacing energetic and the humor sharp. Despite the praise, Zombieland was not without criticism. Some reviewers felt that the plot was thin, essentially functioning as a series of comedic vignettes strung together by a road trip. While the character dynamics kept audiences engaged, detractors argued that the story lacked narrative complexity or stakes compared to other zombie films. In particular, the climax at the amusement park drew mixed reviews. For some, it was a perfect setting for a comedic showdown, full of color, chaos, and spectacle. For others, it felt forced and too convenient, with criticisms that the film abandoned character development in favor of a theme park set piece. Another point of critique was its reliance on style over substance. Some felt that Columbus's narration and the visual rules were more gimmick than innovation, breaking immersion rather than adding to the story. While many viewers found the rules hilarious and engaging, a smaller group of critics believed the device wore thin by the end of the film. Similarly, the constant stream of pop culture references and ironic humor was divisive, with some embracing it as a refreshing modernization of the zombie genre and others dismissing it as shallow. The film's depiction of violence also sparked minor debates. Although most audiences accepted its exaggerated gore as part of the comedy, a few critics suggested that the reliance on slapstick carnage desensitized viewers to violence. In particular, some pointed out that the movie's gleeful approach to zombie killing could be interpreted as a commentary on American gun culture, whether intentional or not. While not a widespread controversy, these critiques added complexity to the way the film was discussed. Awards recognition for Zombieland was modest, but notable. The film received nominations and wins at various genre-based award shows, such as the Scream Awards, where it was recognized for Best Horror Film and Best Cameo for Bill Murray. While it did not compete at more prestigious award ceremonies, its recognition within fan-driven events reinforced its popularity among audiences who celebrated its unique mix of comedy and horror. Over time, retrospective reviews have remained kind to Zombieland, often noting that it has aged well compared to other zombie comedies. Its combination of sharp humor, memorable performances, and cultural references give it a timeless quality that continues to resonate. That said, some critics revisiting the film after the release of its 2019 sequel observed that the original's charm came partly from its novelty, which could not be replicated once audiences had grown familiar with its style. The legacy of Zombieland cannot be understood simply by looking at its box office numbers or its immediate reception. Its true impact lies in the way it reshaped the zombie genre, influenced future filmmakers, and carved out a place for itself in popular culture that persists even more than a decade after its release. The film combined horror, comedy, action, and road trip adventure in a way that resonated with audiences at a time when zombie media was becoming oversaturated, yet still managed to feel fresh and inventive. This ability to stand out from the crowd ensured that Zombieland's influence went far beyond its release year, inspiring sequels, attempted television adaptations, merchandise, and countless references in other media. One of the clearest parts of Zombieland's legacy is how it revitalized the horror comedy subgenre in the United States. Before its release, Shaun of the Dead had already proven that comedy and zombies could coexist successfully, but Zombieland gave the formula a distinctly American twist. The emphasis on road trips, guns, pop culture humor, and irreverent narration made it uniquely appealing to U.S. audiences while also resonating with international viewers. This set a precedent for future films that sought to blend horror with mainstream comedy, paving the way for titles like Warm Bodies, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, and even lighter, tongue-in-cheek horror-adjacent movies like Deadpool, which use similar meta-humor and fourth-wall-breaking narration. Zombieland also influenced how audiences and filmmakers approached zombie survival narratives. Columbus's survival rules quickly became one of the film's most memorable contributions to pop culture. The rules worked not only as a comedic device, but also as a creative way of addressing the practicalities of survival in a zombie apocalypse. This focus on humorously pragmatic survival tips inspired fan communities, memes, and online lists of real zombie survival guides. The rule system also became a recurring point of parody and homage in other media, from television shows to internet sketches. In some ways, it helped solidify the idea that the zombie apocalypse genre could be more about commentary and entertainment than purely about horror and dread. The characters themselves became archetypes that influenced later media. Tallahassee, with his mixture of bravado, humor, and hidden pain, set the stage for similar characters in other films and shows. The tough but secretly vulnerable survivor who uses humor as a coping mechanism. Columbus offered a different kind of hero than audiences were used to in zombie films. Awkward, anxious, and overly cautious, yet relatable and endearing. This anti-heroic protagonist model would appear in other works, where characters who might not seem like natural survivors are elevated into leading roles. Wichita and Little Rock added layers of independence, wit, and resourcefulness, showing that female characters in zombie films could be more than background figures or victims. Collectively, this ensemble showed future creators that zombie comedies could thrive on dynamic characters, not just gore and action. One of the more concrete aspects of Zombieland's legacy was the long-running effort to adapt the concept into a television series. Given the episodic structure of the original film, it lent itself naturally to serialized storytelling. Amazon Studios produced a pilot in 2013 for a Zombieland TV series, featuring a new cast playing the same characters. However, the pilot was met with negative fan reactions, largely because audiences had become so attached to the original actors that replacements failed to capture the same charm. The project was ultimately abandoned, but the attempt demonstrated the lasting interest in expanding Zombieland's universe. Even though the series failed, the idea of episodic zombie comedies continued to influence television, most notably with projects like Santa Clarita Diet, which embraced absurdity and humor within a zombie setting. The release of Zombieland, Double Tap in 2019 further solidified the legacy of the original. Arriving 10 years later, the sequel leaned heavily on nostalgia and the established chemistry of the cast. While it received more mixed reviews than the first film, its very existence spoke to the enduring affection audiences had for the original. Few horror comedies achieve a sequel after such a long gap, but Zombieland's cult status ensured that fans remained invested in the world and the characters. The sequel also extended the franchise's cultural footprint, ensuring that younger audiences who missed the first film in theaters could connect with the series. Beyond sequels and failed spin-offs, Zombieland left a mark on popular culture through its references in other media. Comedy shows like Robot Chicken and Family Guy parodied the film's rules and characters. Internet culture embraced the survival rules as meme fodder, with fans creating endless variations like the rules of college or the rules of social media, in the style of Columbus's List. Video games, too, seemed to reflect the film's influence, particularly in how humor was incorporated into survival scenarios. Games like Dead Rising, which already leaned into comedic absurdity, found renewed popularity in part because audiences who enjoyed Zombieland sought similar experiences in interactive media. The Bill Murray cameo also became a touchstone for cinematic humor. It is often cited as one of the best cameos in film history and set a high bar for future movies looking to pull off similar self-referential surprises. Murray's appearance cemented the idea that Zombieland wasn't afraid to poke fun at celebrity culture, Hollywood excess, or even the idea of zombie movies themselves. This level of meta-commentary influenced later films that blurred the line between parody and homage, making Zombieland a reference point in discussions about comedic cameos. Zombieland's influence extended into merchandise and fan culture. The film's quotable lines, survival rules, and characters became staples at fan conventions, cosplay events, and online communities. Items like Double Tap, T-shirts, or Tallahassee-inspired hats were popular among fans, and even today the film enjoys a cult-like following among horror and comedy enthusiasts alike. Its mixture of accessible humor and gory spectacle made it appealing to both hardcore horror fans and casual moviegoers, ensuring a broad and lasting audience base. Zombieland has earned a unique position in the hearts and minds of its viewers, not merely as a zombie comedy, but as a cultural touchstone that elicited diverse responses across generations. While critical analysis focuses on narrative structure, cinematography, and thematic depth, the way audiences interpret and emotionally engage with the film provides an equally compelling layer of understanding. The audience's reflections on Zombieland reveal its resonance on multiple levels, from humor and spectacle to themes of survival, family, and identity. By examining these interpretations, it becomes evident that the film's impact is shaped not only by its content, but by the ways it interacts with viewer expectations, nostalgia, and the social zeitgeist of the late 2000s and beyond. The first and most immediate reaction from audiences is overwhelmingly humorous enjoyment. Many viewers cite the film's comedic timing, exaggerated kills, and witty dialogue as the primary reason for its appeal. The opening credit sequence, in which Columbus introduces his rules for survival while navigating a slow-motion zombie massacre, immediately establishes a tone that audiences found both surprising and entertaining. The rules themselves, ranging from cardio to double tap, became a cultural phenomenon, cited, parroted, and adapted across social media platforms, fan sites, and casual conversations. This reaction highlights how humor can serve as an entry point for deeper engagement, allowing viewers to bond over shared laughter while becoming invested in the narrative and characters. Audiences also responded to Zombieland on an emotional level. While the film is ostensibly a comedy, its underlying themes of loss, isolation, and the search for connection resonated with many viewers. Columbus, as an anxious, cautious, and introspective protagonist, became an audience surrogate, particularly for those who identify with introversion or overthinking. His journey from solitary survival to forming a chosen family mirrors common human experiences of loneliness and the gradual building of trust. Many viewers reported feeling a sense of catharsis as Columbus overcomes his fears, particularly in the climactic confrontation with the clown zombie, which represents the triumph of personal growth over irrational anxiety. Tallahassee, too, struck an emotional chord, with audiences empathizing with his grief over the loss of his son. Despite his over-the-top personality, his pain and eventual bonding with Little Rock revealed a vulnerability that humanized him, creating an emotional depth that transcended the film's comedic premise. Another aspect that shaped audience interpretation was the depiction of Wichita and Little Rock. Female viewers in particular often highlighted the sisters' independence, resourcefulness, and intelligence as refreshing within the zombie genre, which has historically emphasized male survival. The sisters' ability to con, manipulate, and survive in a dangerous world allowed audiences to see strong female agency without reducing the characters to mere stereotypes or damsels in distress. Many viewers appreciated that the film balanced humor with empowerment, showing that comedy need not undermine character depth or narrative stakes. The film's road trip structure also influenced audience reflections. The journey from one location to another allowed viewers to interpret the story as more than a fight for survival. It became a metaphorical exploration of life, freedom, and the search for meaning amidst chaos. Each new environment, abandoned cities, empty highways, grocery stores, Bill Murray's mansion, and the Pacific Playland amusement park, offered audiences a chance to reflect on the juxtaposition of civilization and anarchy, nostalgia and destruction. Fans often cited these locations as memorable, symbolic backdrops that enhanced their engagement, with some interpreting the amusement park finale as a visual representation of reclaiming joy and childhood innocence even in the face of societal collapse. Zombieland's tone also allowed audiences to engage with horror in a non-threatening way. Unlike more traditional zombie media, which often relies on fear, suspense, and visceral gore to elicit emotional responses, Zombieland used over-the-top violence and absurdity to create a safe space for horror comedy. Audiences could enjoy the spectacle of zombie mayhem without experiencing the emotional heaviness typically associated with apocalyptic narratives. This accessibility broadened its appeal, attracting both hardcore horror fans and casual viewers who might otherwise avoid zombie films. In some ways, this approach encouraged audiences to reflect on the genre itself, appreciating its tropes while laughing at its conventions. Pop culture references embedded within the film also shaped audience interpretation. The Bill Murray cameo, for instance, was widely celebrated as a metatextual moment that rewarded viewers' knowledge of the actor's career and comedic persona. Fans interpreted this as a playful acknowledgement of Hollywood tropes, a wink at the audience, and an example of how the film subverts expectations. The cameo created a shared cultural moment, as viewers collectively reacted to Murray's self-deprecating humor, further enhancing the communal experience of watching the movie. Such references encouraged active engagement, prompting audiences to discuss, share, and celebrate the film beyond its immediate viewing. Audience reflections frequently include the film's commentary on rules, survival, and morality. Columbus's list of survival rules, while humorous, prompted viewers to consider the broader question of what it means to navigate a dangerous world. The rules can be interpreted both literally, as practical guidance in a hypothetical apocalypse, and metaphorically, as strategies for navigating life's uncertainties. Discussions among fans often explored which rules were most applicable or humorous, revealing how the film encourages a playful yet reflective engagement with its themes. This layer of interactivity distinguishes Zombieland from more passive entertainment, allowing audiences to internalize and debate its core ideas. Another dimension of audience interpretation involves nostalgia and generational identity. Many viewers who first encountered Zombieland in theaters in 2009 reflect on it as emblematic of late 2000s pop culture. The film's references, music, and humor evoke a particular cultural moment, and audiences often cite it as a formative or comfort movie from their youth. Older viewers, meanwhile, interpreted it as a satirical take on consumerism and societal collapse, noting how abandoned stores and amusement parks symbolize the fragility of everyday structures. The duality of personal nostalgia and broader cultural critique allows the film to resonate across age groups, creating layered audience reflections. A key component of Zombieland's lasting appeal is the depth and evolution of its central characters. While the film's premise, a zombie apocalypse, is inherently chaotic and action-driven, the true emotional resonance comes from the journeys of the four main survivors: Columbus, Tallahassee, Wichita, and Little Rock. Each character starts with distinct traits and flaws, and the film carefully develops their personalities, relationships, and motivations throughout the narrative. This emphasis on character growth sets Zombieland apart from many horror comedy films, which often prioritize spectacle over emotional complexity. By analyzing the arcs of each main character, we can see how the movie uses humor, conflict, and survival scenarios to illustrate transformation, connection, and self-discovery. Columbus, played by Jesse Eisenberg, is introduced as an overly cautious and neurotic survivor whose worldview is shaped by fear. His survival rules act as a literal and metaphorical framework for his life, dictating his decisions and interactions. Columbus's character embodies anxiety, overthinking, and the need for control in a chaotic world. At the beginning of the film, he is socially awkward and isolated, avoiding connections even when offered companionship. His initial encounters with Wichita and Little Rock reveal both his desire for friendship and his fear of vulnerability. As the story progresses, Columbus's arc centers on learning to trust others and confront personal fears. The clown zombie sequence at the amusement park is a symbolic climax of this arc, forcing him to face his deepest phobia and proving that courage and connection can outweigh rigid adherence to rules. By the end of the film, Columbus's character demonstrates growth through his willingness to take risks for love and companionship, moving from isolation to forming a surrogate family with the others. Tallahassee, portrayed by Woody Harrelson, presents a different type of character arc. Initially, he appears as a hypermasculine, thrill-seeking zombie killer, obsessed with finding Twinkies and exacting over-the-top vengeance on the undead. However, beneath this comedic bravado lies a profound layer of grief and emotional repression. Tallahassee is revealed to have lost his son, and his exaggerated behavior, ranging from violence to humor, functions as a coping mechanism for his grief. His journey throughout the film involves reconciling his pain with the need for connection. His bond with Little Rock, in particular, represents the possibility of forming new familial ties and finding purpose despite past loss. By the climactic amusement park sequence, Tallahassee's violence transforms from a cathartic outlet for grief into a protective force for his new family, reflecting both his personal growth and the theme of resilience. Wichita, played by Emma Stone, exhibits a cautious, guarded persona at the outset. She is pragmatic, intelligent, and highly protective of her younger sister, Little Rock. Her resourcefulness and initial con artist tendencies are rooted in survival instincts and mistrust of outsiders. Wichita's arc focuses on learning to lower her defenses and form genuine relationships. Throughout the film, her interactions with Columbus and Tallahassee highlight her internal struggle between self-preservation and emotional vulnerability. Wichita's gradual willingness to rely on others demonstrates her growth, and by the film's climax, she has embraced trust, collaboration, and the idea of chosen family. Her development is particularly significant because it challenges traditional gender roles in horror films, presenting a female character who is both strong and emotionally nuanced. Little Rock, portrayed by Abigail Breslin, is the youngest character and represents both innocence and adaptability. Her arc is less about overcoming fear and more about coming of age in an extraordinary and dangerous world. Initially dependent on Wichita, Little Rock begins to assert her independence as the film progresses, demonstrating courage, cleverness, and a developing sense of agency. Her interactions with Columbus, Tallahassee, and Wichita reflect the tension between childhood vulnerability and emerging maturity. By the end of the film, she demonstrates both physical and emotional growth, embracing the chaos of the world while solidifying her role as an integral member of the group. Little Rock's arc emphasizes the theme of growth under pressure, illustrating that even in a post-apocalyptic world, young individuals can assert agency and develop resilience. The relationships between characters are central to their development. The dynamics of trust, conflict, and collaboration are explored through both comedic and dramatic interactions. Columbus and Tallahassee serve as complementary foils, one cautious and neurotic, the other impulsive and exuberant. Their evolving friendship demonstrates that contrasting personalities can coexist and support one another, reinforcing the theme of unity and diversity. Wichita and Little Rock's bond underscores familial loyalty and protection, while their eventual inclusion of Columbus and Tallahassee reflects the expansion of chosen family in a world where traditional family structures have been disrupted. The interplay between these relationships allows the film to explore complex social and emotional dynamics within the heightened context of a zombie apocalypse. Humor plays a role in character development as well. The film's comedy often stems from the characters' flaws, quirks, or exaggerated traits, allowing audiences to understand their personalities while providing levity. For example, Columbus's obsessive adherence to rules is both a source of comedy and a reflection of his anxiety, while Tallahassee's melodramatic obsession with Twinkies is humorous, yet symbolic of his emotional vulnerability. The humor is carefully calibrated to humanize the characters, ensuring that their growth feels authentic even within the absurd and violent context of the story. Conflict drives much of the characters' arcs. Physical danger, social tension, and moral dilemmas provide opportunities for growth. The zombie threat serves as an externalized obstacle, forcing the characters to act, make choices, and reveal deeper aspects of themselves. For example, when the group encounters various challenges such as navigating deserted highways, dealing with other survivors, or confronting zombies, their reactions expose strengths and weaknesses, creating moments of tension that contribute to character evolution. These conflicts also serve as narrative devices that highlight moral and emotional themes, such as loyalty, courage, and empathy. Symbolism reinforces character development. The clown zombie represents Columbus's fear, Tallahassee's Twinkie obsession symbolizes grief, and the amusement park embodies nostalgia and the possibility of reclaiming joy. By overcoming symbolic challenges, the characters demonstrate growth beyond their immediate survival skills. The visual and narrative symbolism integrates seamlessly with character arcs, enhancing both storytelling and audience engagement. Costume and set design are critical components of Zombieland, playing a vital role in defining characters, establishing the post-apocalyptic world, and reinforcing the film's tone. The filmmakers relied on visual storytelling through clothing, makeup, props, and environments to immerse audiences in a universe where civilization has collapsed, yet humor and personality remain central. From the wardrobe choices of the main characters to the meticulously crafted sets and locations, every element of costume and production design contributes to the narrative, thematic depth, and audience engagement. The film's costume design is immediately effective in conveying character traits. Columbus, played by Jesse Eisenberg, is dressed in a casual, unassuming manner, often wearing layered jackets, hoodies, and practical sneakers. This choice reflects his cautious, introverted personality and pragmatic approach to survival. The muted colors of his wardrobe, mostly browns, grays, and dark blues, mirror his low-key, risk-averse mindset and serve to visually contrast him against the more flamboyant Tallahassee. As Columbus navigates the chaos of the apocalypse, his clothing reinforces his role as the thoughtful observer, a character whose physical attire subtly signals his mental and emotional traits. Tallahassee, portrayed by Woody Harrelson, stands in stark contrast with his wardrobe. He wears bright, attention-grabbing colors, leather jackets, and tactical vests, signaling confidence, bravado, and larger-than-life energy. His outfits, paired with bandanas and utility belts, emphasize his obsession with preparedness and exaggerated masculinity, while also highlighting his eccentricity. The Twinkie-centric sequences are enhanced by these bold choices, giving the character a cartoonish, almost comic book quality that aligns with the film's playful tone. The costume design allows Tallahassee to embody both the hero and the comic foil, making his physicality and clothing part of the humor and spectacle. Wichita, played by Emma Stone, is dressed in functional yet stylish clothing, combining practicality with subtle visual cues about her independence and intelligence. Her outfits often include fitted jackets, muted layers, and sleek footwear, emphasizing agility and resourcefulness. The practical elements of her wardrobe underscore her survival skills, while the stylish touches hint at a desire to maintain individuality even in a world stripped of societal norms. Little Rock, portrayed by Abigail Breslin, is similarly dressed for mobility and protection, but her youthfulness is conveyed through brighter, more playful tones in her clothing, signaling both vulnerability and resilience. Together, Wichita and Little Rock's wardrobes communicate not only their survival abilities, but also their personalities and sibling dynamic, reinforcing the emotional core of the film. Zombie costumes are another essential aspect of the design. The production team used a combination of practical makeup, prosthetics, and tattered clothing to create distinct, memorable undead characters. Each zombie's appearance is exaggerated to balance horror with comedy. For example, some zombies wear partially intact business attire or casual street clothes, highlighting the sudden collapse of normal life. Others, such as the clown zombie at the amusement park, incorporate theatrical and visually striking elements that enhance both fear and absurdity. These costumes allow audiences to immediately recognize threat levels and contribute to the visual humor of the film, while also providing a rich, layered depiction of societal collapse. Set design in Zombieland plays an equally important role in world building. The film's locations range from empty suburban streets and abandoned grocery stores to a dilapidated amusement park and Bill Murray's opulent mansion. Each set reflects the film's post-apocalyptic environment while also providing opportunities for visual humor and narrative creativity. The suburban streets, filled with overturned vehicles and deserted homes, convey desolation, yet the filmmakers incorporated visual gags, such as zombies engaged in ridiculous activities, that reinforce the comedic tone. Grocery stores and supply centers serve as both practical locations for survival and staging grounds for over-the-top action sequences, blending realism with absurdity. Bill Murray's mansion is a standout example of set design that reinforces both narrative and humor. The opulent interiors, filled with luxury decor, expensive props, and meticulously arranged items, contrast sharply with the desolation outside, creating a surreal juxtaposition. The set reflects Murray's celebrity persona while also providing a playground for comedy. Columbus and Tallahassee's interactions with the mansion space allow for physical humor, commentary on wealth and celebrity, and imaginative use of props in combat and exploration. The mansion is visually rich, demonstrating how set design can be both functional and narratively expressive. The Pacific Playland amusement park, where the climax occurs, is another masterclass in set design. The designers created a visually vibrant, chaotic environment that blends childhood nostalgia, horror, and absurdity. Bright neon lights, spinning rides, and carnival games juxtapose with zombie chaos, emphasizing the film's thematic contrast between joy and danger. The amusement park allows for inventive action sequences and comedic scenarios, giving the characters and the audience a visually stimulating space where tension, humor, and spectacle converge. The set design also supports symbolism, with the park representing both the innocence of the past and the thrill of reclaiming agency in a dangerous world. Props and practical design elements further enhance immersion. Weapons, vehicles, and everyday objects are adapted for survival, reflecting both creativity and personality. Tallahassee's arsenal of firearms, bats, and improvised weapons communicates his obsession with preparedness and flair for dramatics. Columbus often relies on practical tools and strategic thinking, emphasizing intellect over brute force. Wichita and Little Rock demonstrate ingenuity through their manipulation of props for defense and misdirection. These design choices transform everyday items into extensions of character identity, contributing to both narrative and humor. Costume and set design also communicate tone and genre blending. The desaturated colors of abandoned streets and muted costumes establish a believable apocalypse, while bursts of bright colors, such as amusement park lights or specific wardrobe choices, signal comedic or dramatic beats. The combination of realistic decay and stylized exaggeration ensures that the film maintains balance between horror and comedy. Visual cues embedded in costumes and environments guide audience expectations, making scenes immediately readable while allowing room for surprise and subversion. Dialogue and scriptwriting are central to Zombieland's enduring appeal, functioning as both a narrative engine and a source of humor, tension, and character development. The screenplay, crafted with careful attention to pacing, tone, and audience engagement, ensures that the film's comedic, horror, and dramatic elements coexist seamlessly. From witty banter to sharply constructed rules for survival, the dialogue not only defines the characters, but also guides the audience's experience, balancing absurdity with emotional depth. A close examination of the script reveals how the writing reinforces character, drives the story, and amplifies the film's distinctive voice. One of the most immediately recognizable aspects of Zombieland's dialogue is Columbus's narration. Serving as a quasi-omniscient guide, his voiceover introduces viewers to the rules of survival and offers commentary on the apocalypse. This narrative device allows the audience to enter Columbus's mindset, providing exposition, humor, and insight into his personality, without feeling forced. The rules, ranging from cardio to double tap, are delivered in a matter-of-fact tone, creating a comedic juxtaposition with the chaos unfolding on screen. This technique allows the script to convey critical information efficiently, while also establishing a unique tonal signature. The voiceover reinforces Columbus's perspective, emphasizing caution, anxiety, and logical thinking, and gives the audience a framework for understanding both the plot and the rules of the world. The writing of individual characters reflects their distinct personalities. Tallahassee, for instance, speaks with bravado, exaggeration, and humor that underscore his larger-than-life persona. His dialogue often includes witty one-liners, over-the-top threats, and absurd obsessions, such as his fixation on Twinkies. These lines are delivered with timing and tone that highlight both the comedy and the character's emotional undercurrent, particularly his hidden grief. Tallahassee's dialogue is simultaneously entertaining and revealing, offering insight into his motivations and psychological complexity while contributing to the film's humor. Wichita's dialogue emphasizes intelligence, independence, and subtle humor. Her lines are sharp, cautious, and occasionally sarcastic, demonstrating both her strategic mindset and her protective instincts toward Little Rock. In contrast, Little Rock's dialogue is playful and curious, reflecting her youth, adaptability, and developing confidence. The script ensures that each character's speech patterns are consistent and reflective of their personality, allowing the audience to understand them quickly while making their interactions dynamic and engaging. The interplay between characters, particularly in dialogue-heavy scenes, provides both narrative progression and comedic timing. The screenplay balances dialogue with physical comedy and visual storytelling. Many jokes arise not solely from spoken lines but from the way characters interact with their environment, props, and zombies. However, dialogue frequently enhances these visual gags by providing commentary, irony, or reinforcement. For example, during Tallahassee's rampages, his exaggerated threats and witty commentary complement the slapstick violence, creating a blend of humor that is both verbal and visual. Similarly, the dialogue during the amusement park climax combines banter, instructions, and personal quips, amplifying the chaos while maintaining clarity for the audience. Humor in Zombieland's dialogue is particularly noteworthy for its range and sophistication. The script uses multiple comedic strategies, including irony, hyperbole, timing, wordplay, and situational comedy. Columbus's overly cautious observations contrast with Tallahassee's impulsive lines, creating dynamic comedic tension. Witty exchanges between characters highlight differences in personality and worldview, while recurring motifs, such as the repeated invocation of survival rules, create running gags that reinforce both humor and narrative continuity. The balance of sarcasm, deadpan delivery, and absurd exaggeration ensures that the dialogue remains engaging and fresh throughout the film. Exposition is another area where the script excels. In many post-apocalyptic stories, the world-building can feel forced or awkward. Zombieland, however, integrates exposition naturally into dialogue and narration. Columbus's voiceover introduces the rules and context without halting the story, while characters' interactions reveal information about the state of the world, other survivors, and zombie behavior. The result is a screenplay that is both informative and entertaining, avoiding clunky exposition and maintaining narrative momentum. The film's pacing is heavily influenced by its script. Dialogue sequences are tightly constructed to balance tension and humor, with rapid-fire exchanges during action sequences and slower, reflective moments during quieter scenes. The amusement park finale, for example, uses dialogue to heighten tension, clarify character intentions, and maintain comedic timing amidst chaotic action. Conversations between Columbus and Wichita also provide emotional resonance, allowing character growth to unfold in tandem with the plot. The screenplay's pacing ensures that the audience remains engaged, with dialogue contributing as much to narrative propulsion as action or visual spectacle. Character development is further enhanced by the script's dialogue. Lines are crafted to reveal internal motivations, fears, and desires without overt exposition. Tallahassee's obsession with Twinkies is humorous, but it also symbolizes his need for small joys in a bleak world. Columbus's adherence to rules reflects his anxiety and need for control. Wichita's cautious language reflects her protective instincts, while Little Rock's playful quips highlight her emerging independence. The dialogue is deliberately layered, allowing multiple interpretations and reinforcing thematic elements such as survival, family, and adaptation. Memorable lines from the film have become cultural touchstones, illustrating the script's impact beyond the movie itself. Phrases such as double tap and cardio are instantly recognizable to fans, functioning as both humorous catchphrases and narrative anchors. These lines have permeated internet culture, fan communities, and social media, demonstrating the screenplay's ability to create lasting cultural resonance. Even minor lines often carry significant weight, contributing to humor, character identity, or plot development. The screenplay also demonstrates a mastery of tonal shifts. Zombieland moves seamlessly between comedy, horror, and emotional beats, and dialogue plays a crucial role in managing these transitions. Characters' speech often signals the tone of a scene, allowing the audience to adjust expectations and maintain engagement. For instance, Columbus's nervous observations can transform a tense moment into a comedic one, while Tallahassee's exaggerated bravado can lighten a scene without undermining danger. The writing ensures that tonal shifts feel natural, preventing jarring transitions between humor and horror. The marketing and promotional strategy for Zombieland played a significant role in shaping its success and cultural impact. Given that the zombie genre was already crowded by the late 2000s, the film's promotion needed to clearly convey its unique blend of horror, comedy, and road trip adventure. The marketing team leveraged multiple channels, including trailers, posters, social media, merchandise, and innovative campaigns, to capture the attention of both horror fans and broader audiences. The strategies combined traditional cinematic promotion with viral marketing, creating anticipation while highlighting the film's humor, action, and distinctive tone. Trailers were the cornerstone of the campaign and were carefully crafted to balance horror and comedy. Early teasers emphasized the film's fast-paced, chaotic energy while introducing the main characters and Columbus's quirky survival rules. Trailers showcased the iconic opening sequence in slow motion, with Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls playing against zombies wreaking havoc. This immediately communicated the film's unique tone, signaling to audiences that it would not be a conventional horror film but an irreverent and energetic comedy. Subsequent trailers focused on character dynamics, humorous dialogue, and inventive action sequences, gradually revealing the film's emotional core alongside the spectacle. By structuring trailers to highlight both humor and character, the marketing team effectively broadened the appeal beyond just zombie enthusiasts. Poster designs further reinforced the film's tone and themes. Promotional materials prominently featured the main cast in dynamic poses, often armed and ready for zombie encounters, with exaggerated facial expressions that conveyed humor and personality. The visual design used bright colors and stylized typography to differentiate Zombieland from darker, grimmer zombie films, signaling a more comedic and accessible experience. Key images, such as Tallahassee clutching a Twinkie or the group wielding improvised weapons, served as immediate visual cues for the film's combination of horror and absurdity. These posters effectively communicated the film's genre-blending nature while creating memorable and shareable imagery for audiences. Social media campaigns were an emerging and influential component of the promotional strategy. In 2009, platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube were becoming essential tools for engaging younger audiences, and Zombieland leveraged these channels to expand its reach. Viral videos, behind-the-scenes clips, and interactive content were used to generate buzz and invite fan participation. For example, the film's official social media accounts shared character profiles, survival rule explanations, and humorous snippets from the film, encouraging fans to engage directly with the material. Online communities, message boards, and early fan forums also amplified word-of-mouth promotion, allowing audiences to share favorite lines, memes, and reactions prior to the movie's release. The marketing team capitalized on the film's humor and memorable lines by integrating the survival rules into promotional materials. The double tap rule, in particular, became a central hook for marketing, appearing in trailers, posters, and online campaigns. This focus on a key catchphrase allowed audiences to instantly associate Zombieland with a playful, self-aware tone. Merchandise, such as t-shirts, posters, and novelty items featuring rules or character imagery, created tangible engagement points for fans, extending the film's presence beyond theaters. The rules themselves became cultural signifiers, enabling audience interaction and participation even outside the film. Publicity events and press tours also contributed to the promotion of Zombieland. Cast members, including Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin, made appearances on talk shows, film festivals, and press circuits, often highlighting the film's humor and action sequences. Interviews emphasized character dynamics, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, and the film's unique approach to the zombie genre, providing potential viewers with a narrative and emotional hook beyond visual spectacle. Media coverage frequently highlighted Tallahassee's Twinkie obsession, Columbus's rules, and the Bill Murray cameo, creating talking points that further fueled anticipation. The cameo by Bill Murray became a focal point of the promotional narrative, carefully teased without giving away the plot. Marketing campaigns hinted at a surprise element, generating speculation and discussion among fans and media outlets. This approach capitalized on Murray's cultural resonance, drawing in viewers who might otherwise have been less interested in a zombie comedy. The marketing team's ability to create anticipation for this moment while maintaining secrecy exemplified a sophisticated understanding of audience psychology and fan culture. Innovative promotional strategies extended into partnerships and interactive experiences. Online games, quizzes, and branded content allowed audiences to test their knowledge of survival rules or simulate scenarios from the film. For instance, fans could participate in virtual rule challenges, share results on social media, and interact with character profiles. These experiences encouraged deeper engagement with the film's world and created a sense of community among fans. By blending humor, interactivity, and gamification, the marketing strategy strengthened emotional investment in both the characters and the narrative universe. Cross-promotional efforts also amplified visibility. Partnerships with retail brands, online media outlets, and entertainment platforms allowed Zombieland to reach a diverse audience. For example, in-store promotions featuring Twinkies referenced Tallahassee's obsession and created a playful connection between the film and everyday consumer experiences. These campaigns reinforced the film's humor and accessibility while encouraging audiences to engage with the story and characters outside the theater. Timing and strategic release played an additional role in promotion. The film's October release positioned it near Halloween, aligning with audience expectations for horror-related entertainment while providing a counterpoint to traditional scary films with its comedic tone. Marketing materials highlighted this dual appeal, signaling that Zombieland was appropriate for fans of horror, comedy, and action alike. By emphasizing its genre-blending nature, the campaign expanded potential audience demographics and contributed to strong box office performance. Zombieland occupies a unique position in the zombie genre, and analyzing it in comparison to similar films, earlier adaptations, and other works by its director provides insight into its distinct style, narrative approach, and cultural impact. While the film clearly draws from established conventions of zombie media, it simultaneously subverts expectations, blends genres, and introduces innovations that distinguish it from predecessors and contemporaries alike. A comparative analysis highlights how Zombieland balances comedy, horror, and character-driven storytelling, as well as how it differs from both more traditional zombie narratives and films by its creative team. One of the most direct comparisons is to Shaun of the Dead, the 2004 British horror comedy that also reimagined zombie tropes through humor. Both films share a foundational approach of combining gore with comedy, and both feature protagonists navigating a zombie apocalypse while exploring personal relationships. However, Zombieland distinguishes itself through its distinctly American tone and structure. While Shaun of the Dead relies heavily on social satire, British wit, and domestic settings, Zombieland emphasizes road trip dynamics, high-energy action sequences, and a meta-awareness that frequently breaks the fourth wall. Columbus's narration and survival rules, for instance, provide a structural framework absent in Shaun of the Dead, allowing Zombieland to convey exposition and humor simultaneously. Whereas Shaun of the Dead focuses on the tension between romantic relationships and societal collapse, Zombieland prioritizes chosen family, personal growth, and comic spectacle, creating a more accessible, high-octane experience for a broader audience. Comparing Zombieland to traditional zombie horror films further underscores its innovations. Classic works, such as George Romero's Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, rely on tension, atmosphere, and social commentary to elicit fear. In these films, zombies are emblematic of societal decay, and horror is rooted in suspense, isolation, and mortality. Zombieland, by contrast, uses zombies as both antagonists and comedic devices. The violence is exaggerated and stylized, allowing audiences to engage with horror without experiencing the existential dread characteristic of Romero's films. While the threat is ever-present, it serves as a vehicle for humor and character development, rather than the sole source of tension. This shift reflects a broader evolution in zombie media, demonstrating that the genre can accommodate diverse tones and audience expectations. Zombieland also shares similarities with action-oriented zombie films such as 28 Days Later and Resident Evil. Like these films, Zombieland features high-energy chase sequences, inventive kill scenes, and post-apocalyptic landscapes. However, it differentiates itself through the use of comedic timing, character-focused narrative, and meta-commentary. While Resident Evil emphasizes spectacle, special effects, and action-driven heroism, Zombieland integrates humor into the choreography of action, allowing characters' personalities and quirks to shape how they confront danger. Similarly, 28 Days Later relies on intense, fast-paced horror and bleak tone, whereas Zombieland converts comparable scenarios into moments of levity, absurdity, and audience engagement. In essence, Zombieland blends the adrenaline of action-driven zombie films with the levity of comedy, creating a hybrid that is both thrilling and entertaining in ways its predecessors rarely achieved. From a structural perspective, Zombieland's episodic, road trip narrative contrasts with earlier adaptations. Many zombie films confine characters to single locations, suburban homes, shopping malls, or quarantine cities, limiting exploration and emphasizing claustrophobic tension. Zombieland, however, adopts a mobile structure, following the protagonists as they traverse highways, cities, and landmarks. This episodic approach allows for diverse set pieces, visual humor, and encounters with other survivors, creating a narrative rhythm that alternates between action, comedy, and emotional reflection. The road trip format also reinforces thematic concerns, such as exploration, personal growth, and the formation of chosen families, which may be less pronounced in more confined or traditional zombie settings. Analyzing Zombieland in relation to other works by director Ruben Fleischer further illuminates its stylistic choices. Fleischer, known for blending dark comedy with genre conventions, demonstrates a consistent ability to balance humor, action, and character engagement. His later work, such as Venom, continues this trend, emphasizing humor within high-stakes environments while developing character arcs and visual spectacle. Zombieland, however, represents a particularly pure expression of Fleischer's approach, integrating meta-humor, inventive kills, and a fast-paced narrative with a strong emotional core. Comparing it to his other films highlights Zombieland's effective balance of genre subversion, comedy, and audience engagement, which became a hallmark of Fleischer's directing style. In the broader context of horror comedy, Zombieland can be compared to films like Scary Movie or Scream, which also combine self-aware humor with genre conventions. While these films parody horror tropes, Zombieland differs by embedding humor into its narrative and characters rather than relying primarily on external satire. The comedy arises organically from the protagonist's personalities, interactions, and circumstances, making it more emotionally resonant and narratively integrated. Moreover, Zombieland's focus on survival rules, personal growth, and chosen family distinguishes it from straightforward parody films, allowing the humor to complement rather than overshadow the story. Another comparative point lies in the treatment of female characters. Earlier zombie films often relegated women to secondary roles, emphasizing victimhood or romantic subplots. Zombieland subverts this convention by giving Wichita and Little Rock agency, intelligence, and emotional depth. While Shaun of the Dead also presents strong female characters, Zombieland emphasizes their survival skills, cleverness, and moral complexity within a chaotic and comedic framework. This approach both challenges genre expectations and broadens audience engagement, making the film more inclusive and dynamic. In terms of cultural impact, Zombieland's comparative influence is significant. While it shares thematic DNA with predecessors, such as horror comedy balance and zombie antagonism, its specific combination of road trip narrative, meta-humor, and character-driven storytelling has inspired subsequent works. Films like Warm Bodies, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, and even comedy-adjacent horror titles like Deadpool reflect elements of Zombieland's influence, whether in blending genres, emphasizing witty dialogue, or creating memorable, larger-than-life characters. Its popularity and approach set a precedent for modern zombie comedies, showing that audiences respond positively to a balance of humor, action, and emotional resonance.